Hello and welcome to this week's look at action and stunts on film and television. How are you? Welcome to Friday. You've made it through another week. You're looking marvellous, by the way. I love what you've done with your hair. That's particularly lovely. Now, we don't do westerns very often. We've done a couple of bits and pieces in the past, but well, this is a proper one. I don't mean proper western, but you know what I mean. This is a movie that people keep going back to time and time again. They keep referencing it when you talk about westerns of any shape or form. This movie always falls into that category. We talk of Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid from 1969. It's a classic. It's the first time that Paul Newman and Robert Redford worked together on screen. Subsequently, they worked again in, what was it, The Sting? Sting's such a great movie as well. So this was where the linchpin, this is where it all started. And it's Wyoming, it's the 1890s, it's the story of everyday bank robbing folk who like nothing more than getting up to high jinks and taking some stuff from other people, primarily large corporations. And in order to do this, they have to put together a team of stunt professionals to make everything work. There are a number of moments in this picture that whenever you see that compilation of action standout stunt moments that happens all over the place from time to time on award shows, on television, best of clips, all the clips are in here. You know, the cliff jump and the boxcar explosion and, the shootout at the end and the all the bits and pieces. Well, we're going to look at all of that. We're going to have a look at that and try and highlight what's going on and try and, more importantly, to tell you how it's going on. So let's get right on with that, shall we? And it looks very much like this. So let's have a look at this, shall we? Many wonderful moments. We're going to start out of order, but nevertheless, the bicycle. The whole idea was that there was somebody who was going to come in, he was a circus performer, and he was going to do the trick cycling for Paul Newman. Now, it turns out that he couldn't actually do the job. Paul Newman actually was much, much better on two wheels than he was. And so all of the initial cycling, these shots with Catherine Ross, and the trick cycling and numerous positions that he managed to get himself into, was Paul Newman. Very dedicated, very, very dedicated to getting the whole thing right. And it turned out that he could do a great deal more than the circus performer. Later on, there is the crash that happens, and Mickey Gilbert steps in to double Paul Newman for this, because he was also fairly tasty on a bike. And was in a position to cycle the thing backwards and on his head and all the different positions that he managed to get himself into. But Paul Newman really did deliver. Lots of peculiar bits and pieces, no additional pieces added to the bike. This is all him doing it for real. Really nice stuff. And then the crash. So Mickey comes along backwards, crashing through the balsa wood fence that's been put together and disappearing into a heap the other side. There's a bull that then runs at them, and the bull had to be filmed in a number of different ways because it wasn't really working. There's a lovely two-man switch early on as well. So Robert Redford on top of the train. It then cuts to Mickey Gilbert running across the top of the train and running over the top there, look, getting further down to the point where they decide they're going to do a switch. So he jumps down, that's Mickey Gilbert jumping from there, and popping up at the other end is Robert Redford. Nicely done, old-fashioned, in camera, doing it for real. Nice little way to start that one off. Then we're going to take a look at the boxcar explosion, which is a monster. But Mickey had decided with Jim Arnett that, look, if everybody else is packed far away, which they were, because they really threw the kitchen sink at the amount of explosives that were going to be in this thing to let it go. Everything else is covered. They've got boards round, they've got metal bars up. The crew, as far as they're concerned, are quite safe and sound out of the way. But Mickey and Jim knew that if they were right on top of the explosion, the big blast, the huge amount of fire, would actually disappear over the top of them, the fireball, and then wouldn't injure them. All right, they'd have a bit of shrapnel knocking about, and when you look at the explosion, we slowed it down a touch for you to have a look at. This is the explosion as it happens in the film. It's massive, right? And there's lots of bits and pieces coming. That boxcar created for the purpose of the exercise. But when you look at it slowed down, they are right on top of it, and the major part of that fireball disappears over the top. There is wood and bits of shrapnel firing at them, and they're having to turn and get out of the way. But further back, those camera positions are being pelted with all of this stuff, and there were scratches and bruises and nicks and the occasional burn because of how far back they were, and that explosion then landed right on top of them. So there's two stunt boys trying to keep everybody safe and worked it out for themselves and said, "It's okay, we're back here, that's fine." Followed by this lovely line that Redford says, you got enough explosives there, Butch, you reckon? Well, yeah, maybe. The boxcar horses, of course, is the other thing. The idea is that when that door is opened, the horses come running out, when in point of fact it was much simpler to have them run in from one side and then out of the other side, and the stunt guys there would then simply ride the horses up and out of the boxcar. Still not easy. Little ramp up the other side to make life a bit simpler. Camera positions placed all over the place so they can get this footage down. It's much simpler to try and cover all of your possible angles, making the editor's job easier. And of course, they run in from one side and jump out of the other side. Not easy dropping down from that height. And there's the different camera angles that they've covered it with. So a nice little job there. And of course, the boys then go, "Oh, well, we're being chased. Let's get out of here." They then run onto horseback and start chasing away. Again, some of the stunt guys there, all on the horses, running through the situation. There was a switch at some point, which I haven't managed to capture on here, but again, Mickey Gilbert doubling Robert Redford, jumping onto the back of Jim Arnett's horse. So there's then one horse riding, and they're trying to follow all the horses as they go off towards, ultimately, the cliff, which is where the next piece of action happens. There is a couple of horse falls along the way. Here's a saddle fall, very interesting one, because he's going off left and then turning in air and then landing face first. So he'd be travelling backwards at that point. A little awkward little fall, but nicely done. They're good, aren't they? Yes, they are. And running away. And so ultimately, that's what happens, is that you try and cover it from as many possible angles as you can. These guys then running up towards shot. There will be a transfer further down the line, one horse onto another. Redford onto the back of Newman's horse, Mickey Gilbert in this instance doing that, and that then leads them up towards the cliff. The cliff jump is probably the most memorable moment in the entire picture, simply because of how clever the footage was in order to capture it. The location, Durango, so I'm understood, was the location itself was great from a photographic perspective, but when you're looking at it to physically jump from the edge of that cliff, the water isn't deep enough. It's very clear when they look down that there's white foam over the top of what is evidently rock, and so they do the first part of the shot here, and then the second part is done at the Paramount Ranch. Firstly, you need to have the actors leaving the cliff. And they do that, and as you'll notice on here, running right to left through the shot. They jump off about 10 feet down onto a catcher. Now that's padded and that's them done. This is the second part of the fall. A crane is placed in position 80 feet up. And then, the most important part of all of this, they've aerated the water to make landing a little simpler. It'll make the landing a little softer for the purpose of that. That's why you see those high-board divers with the water being bubbled up underneath them at their landing spot. But the camera position has a painting at the end of it, which then takes into consideration the positioning of where the stunt guys are, far enough back so that they will appear to be jumping from the top of the cliff. That's Howard Curtis behind and Mickey Gilbert in front. Mickey Gilbert going for a saddle fall, ooh, right in there, look. Not quite landing flat or not quite landing with his toes in the water. A seat drop, I think it's referred to. So that's the shot there. And of course, they were jumping left to right. Now they flip the film for the final edit. They jump right to left, and then the jump of them leaving and into the cliff. And it's absolutely spot on. A beautiful idea. The running W, I wanted to discuss this briefly because there is a mule which is brought down at some point here. And this particular development, okay, we understand it as bringing horses down, but it was there for training purposes, for breaking horses. Horses that would run, that would buck, that would kick. Ultimately, you've got a little cable, rope in this instance, going from the front legs to the middle to the back legs. In the instance that we're going to see, it's on the front legs of the mule, and when it starts to kick and buck, those rope is pulled and it goes down onto its knees. Next time around it does it again, it won't do what it did before, because memory says, hang on, when I did this last time, I got pulled up. That's why they work it. And it works. They use it in different levels here. These are the shots of Paul Newman in between the two horses. Mickey Gilbert at the front, pulling the horse along. And he's in the middle of that, so they're getting those close-up shots. The long shots have Jim Arnett, and this is Jim in the middle there, being buffed between the two horses. The mule is on the left, the white one, the horse is on the other side, and they bring that horse down, giving the impression, see, there's the little hobbles on there, which will just be enough for that rope to be pulled and it to go down onto its knees. And here's the shot as they go along, they run through, and down goes the mule there onto the floor. Perfectly fine. Mule gets up, walks away. But that's how they created it. And then Jim Arnett turns up again. That's him on the top of the roof. The final shootout. And this really didn't go well. He then has to fall from that position. It's probably 45, 50 feet into a box rig. Now, these are Mexican boxes. These are not American boxes. And the corrugation in those boxes is much, much less. He's taking longer to fall. And when he falls, he goes straight through the boxes and hits the concrete below, injuring himself to the point where his pelvis has gone completely, broken pelvis in a proper state. And that's all because of local boxes that they were using. Now, the shots, this is the whole thing put together now, so you can see how that works. But the final shot is, in fact, a different stunt performer, and you don't see the fall. All you do is you see that cut. Just before that happens, they're working a whole thing as far as reloading was concerned. They were very keen on trying to make it as realistic as possible, but there are moments where the shooting takes place and Redford doesn't reload his gun at all. I mean, it's like 15, 20 shots before something happens. And of course, it's a 6-shooter, right? So it's going to hold at least 6. There are reloading moments, but not much. That's the final shot there. All of the there, that's where that goes down there. Shooting, and then Redford, Newman gets shot. There's the shot on the roof. There's the other shot there. Lots of fast cutting going on. And then, where do we see this fall? We see it in just a moment. It's just momentarily. There it is there. So it's just a moment. You don't even see it. It's taken completely out of the picture. And then falling inside as the pair of them are shot. All right, we've only captured a couple of the moments. There's a bunch more. But it is a classic film. There's no doubt about it. It's got lots of exciting moments in it. And I sincerely hope that has broadened the mind when it comes to action in this picture. There we go. That's Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. Mickey Gilbert, Jimmy Arnett having the most extraordinary time. Jimmy Arnett not the best of times after breaking his pelvis in that fall. And the difference between... Who knew? Who knew there was a difference between Mexican boxes and American boxes? And the difference in the ply width. Consequently, he fell from a height and disappeared through the whole box rig and landed on the floor. You wouldn't get that on a US one. Because they'd also layered it. I know that they would have layered it anyway, but it was enough for him to warrant, no, that's fine. And the director had said he was trying to cut it and trying to stop him falling because something wasn't right, or Jim had taken just a moment, just a beat too long to do the fall, and then he was trying to stop him. And anyway, that didn't happen, and he fell and got rather seriously injured. But was back not that long afterwards in order to watch the high fall with Mickey Gilbert and Howard Curtis. Also the running W. We're going to have a look at the W a little later on, because I put a thing on TikTok not too long ago, and well, the responses I got was unbelievable. You know, the amount of uproar in connection. What I had done, there was a moment, I'll briefly tell you what it is, but there was a moment on this little video clip that I had put on TikTok. If you haven't seen it, go to the TikTok page, you'll see it on there. And it was describing a number of ways that horses are brought down on film. And it had the saddle fall. It had a falling horse being brought down with a rein, right? So the horse's head goes all the way around to the point of no return, and then the balance takes over and it falls down. And then there was a bulldog thing happened in there as well. A guy jumps up, grabs the other rider and pushes him off the horse. The horse goes down too. And then there was and very clearly, these were Spanish stunt guys. And very clearly, the rider on the horse did not have his hands on the horse. So he's not in control of stopping the horse. He's got guns in both hands. He's firing, to the best of my knowledge. I'm trying to remember off the top of my head. But that's more or less, and therefore he doesn't have hold of the reins. And yet, the horse, right, the head pulls around as though it's a saddle fall, or as though the horse is being pulled down on the bit with a horse fall. He's not in control of that. Therefore, he has to be tied off somewhere. Or it is in the hands of somebody else to make that pull, causing the horse to fall. That's the question that I said it was a kind of running W effect. I wanted to use the phrase running W. Well, the responses I got on the video were incredible, so much so that people were, you know, really very, very passionate about reminding me that it was outlawed. I'm not disputing it. I'm merely stating a fact. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a video, because in research I have found that the reason for the running W being introduced in the first place, and that's quite important, because once you know that, and you know the length that they go to in respect of using this from a training perspective, and that's what it's about. It's about training, and again, the phrase is called breaking horses. It's not about physically breaking them. It's about breaking them from being uneducated in the ways of having a saddle on their back, being around individuals, you know, being able to be instructed to trot, walk, change legs, all of that stuff that you can teach a horse to do. This is how they use it. They use a running W. It's done from a training point of view. I will do a video about that very soon, and hopefully that will put people's minds at rest. I want to explain that from start to finish so that everybody's aware that the running W that you see on screen has been adapted over time, and then eventually outlawed, and then the toe tapper brought in, and then possibly to be outlawed again, and then the CGI horse brought in. So there's a whole bunch of bits and pieces, and we will go through that at some length. But it's in Butch Cassidy with the mule, you know, enabling it to give the impression that it's been shot and brought down. Used by the stunt team there just for a brief moment, but it's there, and therefore it needs to be pointed out. So I hope you've enjoyed that. That's Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. If you haven't seen the movie, go and see the movie, please. It's on any subscription bits and pieces. You can purchase it for all. Just download it. Watch the film. It's well worth it. It's also well worth it for Burt Bacharach's fabulous score. Whenever you hear Raindrops Keep Falling on My Head, I see the bicycle. You do it in your mind's eye. And there's a couple of lovely moments in that. And Mickey Gilbert taking his life into his hand there as well. As with Conrad Hall, I think, initially doing some bits and pieces. So, fun all round that. Good stuff. Check out the Pod Dojo Network. They're responsible for the podcast that happens every Wednesday. If you don't already subscribe, go on and do so. It won't hurt. it's probably going to make your life so much better. As is subscribing to this channel, and the subscription icon is currently on screen. Give it a tap and join tens of thousands of others who have done exactly the same thing. And until next week, where we are back with more of the same, it's bye for now.